All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict. Big adding so many in my head with so many geopolitical issues going on. So, I hope you guys are doing well. We're so excited to be here, as always, and I mean it. So, how are you, Elizabeth?
I'm a little under the weather.
I can tell a little bit your voice. You're taking a lot of medication and all that?
Nope, but I am taking a lot of supplements.
All right. You all know that I'm teasing her because she doesn't take medication. I don't take medication. I don't like medications.
Yep.
Let's not get into pharma.
Yeah, that's a big.
Actually,
big
believe I'm not joking here.
Mhm.
Maybe we should talk about something like that down the
Yeah.
road. We can do. What do you guys think? Would you like to have a show on this?
Well, and even if we're only talking about the business of
Of
pharma,
it.
I'm in the
Oh
business
my gosh,
of
yeah.
medicine in the United States.
Yeah.
I think no one thinks that it's functioning very well.
No.
I don't think either political party, nobody thinks
Yeah.
that that's
What
working
I'm
very
thinking
well.
now, pharma is making people sick for a
Well,
reason.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a profit cycle.
you look at the
right?
population, how
Yeah.
sick they are. So, and
Right.
this doesn't apply just to the US, it's around the world. So,
Well,
pharmaceutical is big.
This is that's actually a really nice segue into our sponsor for the day.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Speaking of sponsor, by the way, guys, we're starting to have sponsored.
Mhm.
Yes, and we are so excited about it. Why is this? It's because with the support of the sponsors, we are able to bring you this kind of shows, guys.
Right.
That is the reason why we're so excited about it. So, who's our sponsor today?
So our sponsor today is BioTrust Collagen, and we were just talking about supplements, and I personally take a lot of supplements, and collagen is one of them that I've taken for a long time. And a lot of people are actually very surprised by how old I am.
Oh, it
because
just
I don't look as old as I am.
It's just numbers, Elizabeth. Who
It
cares
is,
about?
But we care. Women care.
Oh,
That's a fact.
it's
Women
just
care.
But, just numbers. If you are healthy and in good shape, that's all it matters.
That
in my
is
opinion.
True.
In
That
my
is
opinion.
true. But anyway, so our BioTrust collagen, one of the things I really like about it is that it's 5 key types of collagen from 4 different sources. So it's not just from one source. So it's also hydrolyzed, which means it's better and faster to digest.
Wow.
Yes. And it's non-GMO, free of artificial colors and flavors and preservatives and sweeteners, which is really big for me. I stay away from absolutely everything that has artificial colors in it or artificial sweeteners. I stay away from all of that stuff because it's really
bad for your health.
Yeah.
A lot of people do not know. I've seen a lot of people adding that sweetener thing too.
Mhm.
If guys, do not
Mhm.
add sweeteners to your coffee or whatever else you add it for.
Especially artificial ones.
Stay away from that.
It also, and this is maybe my favorite part of it, is that for every order they donate a meal to a hungry child through No Kid Hungry, and they've provided over 5 million meals to hungry kids.
Wow.
And so they're looking to hit their goal of 6 million meals for hungry kids. So if you guys want to check it out, it'll be the link in the below in the description box below.
Well, that's a worthy cause.
It is.
I will support something like
It
this.
is. So thank you to BioTrust Collagen for supporting our show.
Yeah. It's really that's a worthy cause.
Yeah, it really is.
Did you know I didn't know?
Really?
No, I did not.
Huh.
Did you share that with me? No.
Yeah.
So I really didn't know. So I'm very impressed.
Yeah, me too. I'm actually very happy that they're sponsoring us.
Well, then we're gonna do a good job for them. So so you guys now you know who's sponsoring us for this. So check it out, and as Elizabeth said, we will have a link for you downstairs. Down
in
at the description.
box below.
It's too early, maybe. Now, anyway, what we're gonna be talking about today, it's an interesting topic. And again, the reason why we bring certain topics is because we want to highlight the geopolitical and economic impact on what's gonna be happening around the world.
Right.
And this one of those topics that, funny enough, that here in the Western media, I looked into, there are few articles, very limited.
Right.
As to why. So the topic is about the Saudis just made a deal on June 11th, I think 11th or 12th, with China by investing $10 billion in a project.
Right.
So.
And here's the thing about that. So, we've seen a mass transition from the Saudis from basically the alliance with the United States
Yeah.
to a very strong economic and political alliance with China. And it's very interesting because China, so the volume of trade with China is $430 billion, or was $430 billion
Mm-hmm.
dollars in 2022,
2022.
which
Yeah.
is up 31% from 2021.
Yeah.
So from the year before that.
Now that trade,
Yeah.
that was with the entire Arab world.
Right. The the Saudi kingdom basically makes up 25% of that,
Oh, that's a big
which is
chunk.
a huge
That's a
chunk,
big chunk.
right? So we're looking at, so according to Bin Farhan in 2022, the
Mhm.
trade between Riyadh and Beijing reached $106.1 billion. And so now we're seeing more and more of these trade deals between Beijing and Riyadh instead of between Riyadh and the United States. And so this has been a deteriorating relationship for a while.
Yeah,
But Saudi is one of the world's biggest oil producers.
that's correct.
And if we lose that, if we lose the relationship that we have with the Saudis,
Yeah.
especially for oil, especially because President Joe Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline when he got into office, that leaves the United States in a very precarious
Yeah.
position.
Yeah, this situation with the Saudis, and I wrote a book about it way back, and I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, so I'm very familiar with that part of the world. The geopolitical shift now in the U.S.-Saudi relations, and I'm not shocked, surprised, and I wrote about it as kind of sort of saw the signs that maybe the end or the beginning of the end is here regarding the U.S.-Saudi relations, and that's basically what it became evident. But what made this faster than anticipated?
Yeah.
Do you know what the question?
Yes,
Do you
that's
know?
a great
Do you know
question.
why?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's because China broke a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. That is the turning point that the United States did not expect, was not expecting at all.
Yeah. Well, and that's a huge deal. So say a little bit more about what you think that really means, not just for Saudi Arabia and Iran,
Yeah.
but also for the entire Arab world. And also for the world in terms of looking at China brokering peace for other countries.
Well, that one has to do also with the Middle East, an entire region, which is usually the Middle East is always in a volatile state.
Yeah.
Because Middle East things can go up and down in no time. There's no indication as to what might transpire, because that's how the Middle East is.
Yeah.
Or was and continues to be.
Right.
Because it's the history of that part of the world. So for us, was of course, when you think about Middle East, what do you think about? Natural resources.
Yeah.
Oil.
Oil specifically.
This it's a lot on oil. And that's basically over the years or over decades since the 1930s, when the US gets involved with the Saudis, we're the one who helped them out with back then Chevron.
Right.
Conoco, I think Conoco company back then. It was a Californian drilling company. But anyway, it became clear to us that, we need to have access to this oil.
Yeah.
Because as you know, I'm sure you guys know that if you have access to oil, you prosper economically.
Right.
That's just the name of the game.
It is.
So Saudis had massive oil, but it was no infrastructure.
Right.
That was the deal that was made with them. So basically it became clear that we'll provide them security in return for oil. That was the joke usually used to be said. Saudi Arabia is the U.S. gas station.
Yeah.
So that was a joke.
And the U.S. is the Saudis' military, more or less, right? Their protection.
Actually, believe it or not, a few decades ago, I mean, things are changing now,
right?
Especially with this new crown prince, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. He's not well liked in Washington. I'll tell you this straightforward.
Yeah.
The CIA doesn't get along with him very well. He doesn't get along with the CIA either. He didn't like that the fact they were spying on him. Well, welcome to the real world, MBS, because that's how the US found out about the plan to get the former journalist Jamal Khashoggi, which was ordered by the prince.
Yeah.
So because we had a recording of it, the CIA had a recording. He didn't like that. So.
Yeah.
But that's not the point what we're talking about here. We're talking about the idea of how that relationship between the US and Saudis
Mm-hmm.
became transactional.
Yeah.
Okay, you America or United States, you provide us security, we provide you with unlimited access to oil.
Yeah.
And this is why, if you notice, when I say you notice, the last 2, 3, 4 decades,
Mm-hmm.
it was any time prior to US presidential elections. What do you notice about oil prices? Always down.
Yep. Always
Yes, there
down.
is a reason, because we will reach
Not
out.
right now.
No, 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 no. Because
Not right now.
we will reach out to the Saudis and say, hey,
Right.
increase production.
Well, right now, what are they
It's
doing?
the reverse.
It's absolutely the
Yeah.
reverse.
As a matter of fact, they just agreed to the cut of 3.6 million barrels per day.
Yep.
This is why you had Secretary of State Anthony Blinken went to Saudi Arabia. As a matter of fact, he was the third high-ranking officer, went to Saudi Arabia in less than 3 months
Mm-hmm.
since March.
Well, I mean, they're very OPEC plus
Yeah.
has been very, very clear actually about wanting to raise prices by cutting production.
It's profit. It's business.
Right. And so instead of before this election, which the United States is now in turmoil because of the election cycle that's coming up. But instead of cutting oil prices, it is in fact raising it and cutting production.
Yeah.
And they're unashamed about it completely.
And it's it's business.
Absolutely.
So do you think they're gonna care about what Americans?
No. And it seems like they don't seem to care much about that same level of protection or the same level of economics as they did
why?
before.
Well, you know why?
Why?
Because the enemy is not there anymore.
Yeah.
Iran.
Yeah.
They just got a deal. China brokered the deal for them.
Yeah.
So why would you worry anymore? Because those were arch enemies.
Right.
Usually I don't use the term loosely. Arch enemies mean real enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been throughout the years, throughout the decades, the centuries.
Yeah.
That goes way back, some 1,400 years ago. So the idea that when China brokered the deal, that means China can also provide military hardware.
Right.
Russia can also provide military hardware.
Yeah.
Now, let me make one thing clear here. Just because they can provide military hardware doesn't mean the Saudi is going to go for it overnight.
Sure.
Because it takes time. You have to train your pilot, for example, if they are to use the Su-95, for example, or Su-35 or whatever type of weapons. So it becomes clear that those weapons Saudis will have to be trained on, and it takes time.
Well, and the U.S. has superior weapons as far as we know.
No, I disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Yes, there are some,
yeah,
but not. I wouldn't give it categorically. They are superior. You know why?
Why?
Because you think about the Iron Dome, for example. What they failed to protect.
Yeah.
Or to when the Houthis were launching missiles into Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
The what do you call them? The Patriot anti-missile. They didn't work.
Yeah.
And yet, how much we sell them for?
Right.
This is why now you have countries, even South Korea, believe it or not, they are moving into buying weapons from other entities beside the United States.
Right.
So the only difference in the case of Saudi Arabia, and this is based on the research that I conducted, and I was there on the ground and in the Air Force base in Bandar Air Force Base. That's what it was. The type of weapons, because Saudis were buying so much.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
To the point that to help the U.S. economy, they'll just go ahead and write a check for $60 billion of weapons.
Yeah.
That's just how.
Yeah.
But this era is coming to an end.
It very much looks
and
like
this
it.
deal between Saudi Arabia and China about the $10 billion, it's an indication.
Right.
Now, if you think what the deal is focusing on.
So a couple of different things. So I want to bring up two things.
Yeah.
So one of the deals that happened was over electric car manufacturing, right? So 5.6 billion was for Chinese electric car manufacturing, for the Chinese electric car manufacturer Human Horizons. So, to develop electric cars, because the Saudis are very interested in sort of that momentum forward in terms of, bringing the world to, or themselves.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's themselves. You know why? Because they come to realize that it will be an end one day to oil.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think
So
that's true. So there's a big push for a lot of electric and a big
yeah.
push for figuring out sort of, what is the next step for them. And so they 5.6 billion went there. But
Mhm.
I also want to point out something interesting that I found. So in March,
Mhm.
the Saudi Aramco, which is the biggest crude oil exporter, right?
Actually, that company is owned by the royal family. And just FYI, it's a royal family company
Yep.
that is worth about $2 trillion. That's what they say.
Yeah.
The IPO. As a matter of fact, they were planning or putting some of it an IPO for some investors.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't
But
know
they,
that.
well, nobody know.
Yeah, yeah. That's
That's why
very
I
interesting.
was aware of it back then.
Well, it's actually more interesting because they recently agreed to acquire a 10% interest in Chinese producer Rongsheng Petrochemicals for 3.6
That
billion.
was the deal because they were Chinese investors. The only
Right.
problem was at that time, to my knowledge,
Yeah.
is because the Saudis inflated the value of Aramco.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, you
Yeah,
will
it's very
expect that
possible.
one.
Yeah.
So that is the reason why. But the point is not all this. What the key to all this is to highlight to you
Mhm.
why Saudis will invest that kind of money
Yes,
in China, but
absolutely.
not the US.
So Aramco,
Yeah,
the deal is that Aramco would supply basically almost 500,000 barrels per day.
per
So
day.
it's 480,000 barrels per day of Arabian crude to
Okay.
Rongsheng. Uh, Basically to
Yeah,
Rongsheng.
yeah.
So it's one of their affiliates.
Uh-huh.
But that's a long-term sales agreement, and that's a lot of oil.
That amount, believe it or not, is not much.
It
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 is a lot
it
of
is
oil,
a lot of
but
oil, but yeah, I
in
agree. I
comparison to
agree.
Chinese consumption,
Right.
you're looking at about Chinese consumption, the
Mhm.
expectations by 2030, you're
Yeah.
looking at about nine, almost 20 million barrel a day
That's a lot.
for it to
That's a
maintain its
lot.
economy. That's why I said earlier, access to energy.
Yeah.
If you want to prosper economically,
Yeah.
you have to have access to energy. Now, the key thing about this one here is when China brokered the deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, it had a strategic aim in place.
Yeah.
And that strategic aim was to access oil from both sources.
Yeah.
So when it make more sense to broker a deal so they become friendly and you have access to both. It's a
Yeah.
strategic move,
No,
the way I see it.
absolutely.
That's to me what I call a shrewd diplomacy.
Well, and I'm personally very curious what were the terms that actually got them to sit down at the table and agree? You know what I mean?
No.
What were the actual terms between Saudi Arabia and Iran
Oh,
that
oh.
let them actually find peace? And I do wonder if it's economic in nature.
Well, mainly because you're looking now at investments between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Right. And so that's what I suspect, because when China comes to the table, very often what they come to the table with is economics.
Economics, that's true.
And so that's actually a very big difference in terms of the United States and China
Yeah.
in terms of their strategy, is that the United States sort of comes with
War.
weapons and war and
War,
all of
conflicts.
that. And China comes with economy.
That's true.
And
That's a reality.
That's reality.
And I know Washington is in denial of this. Now, if you say that, they will think you are the enemy.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
crazy because it's not about that. It's not about what I think
Yeah.
or what somebody else thinks.
No.
That's just a fact.
Yeah.
The fact is that China is coming with economy and the United States comes with war.
Yeah.
And we're not at a time in history, and I wonder what the change has been, but we're at a time in history where war is not the thing that
it's not
people seem to
feasible.
want.
Yeah. Well, you look at no different than the ongoing Ukraine conflict.
Mhm.
Like we just released a video this morning about that idea of, do most Americans understand really what's the background story of what the Ukraine Russia conflict is?
No, they
No, they
don't.
don't. They don't. And that is the whole idea of, they don't understand. And the Saudis and Iranians realize that, we better work out a deal that will
Yeah.
benefit both nations. It will benefit both of them. But there is another incentive
Mhm.
behind the scenes. And that incentive is the possibility of both of them being part of BRICS. Now,
Yeah.
China carries weight inside BRICS.
Yeah.
Russia carries way all of them,
Yeah.
as a matter of
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
except on a different level.
Yeah.
The good thing that exists in BRICS is that no one country has a single vote,
Yeah.
which I like that approach.
Yeah.
It's collective decisions, which means it has to be in consultation with everybody.
Yeah.
And I think it's a right way to approach it.
Yeah.
So this way, no
Absolutely.
one country controls the process. You look at, for example, the EU, the
Mm-hmm.
European Union, or some global entities. You get the countries that are very powerful politically,
NATO.
controls. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
You got the idea. So, and this is why I believe the Saudis are thinking in terms of, because to Saudis, based on what I know, and I wrote a
Mm-hmm.
book about.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I had a quote. I had a description
Mm-hmm.
about the Saudi China relations. I don't know if you have access to it or not.
Oh, yes, I do. And
So,
let's see. So this comes from David's book. So David's written a bunch of books. I know he doesn't talk about
no,
it
I
very
don't.
much, but I can. So David's book, this is from The Fall of the House of Saud, which is a book that David wrote, which is available on Amazon. And here's the quote. I can also understand the Al Saud monarchy's rationality for choosing China as the latter's economy grows, making the desert kingdom the primary oil supplier to Beijing. Interesting. My concerns lie in seeing ties between China and Saudi Arabia following King Salman's visit to Beijing in March of 2017. So, interestingly enough, how long has this been going on? And we'll address this
Yeah.
after the quote. Getting closer to the point of Saudi Arabia's granting China the status of its global strategic ally. Doing so confirms the Saudi government's thinking that the United States leadership is becoming more and more irrelevant. This comes on the heels of intense anguish about America's greatness or lack of it displayed on the global stage.
And that was the research I did was back in 2015, 16.
Okay,
And I
so
started writing in 17.
that's actually really important, right? Because right now we're seeing the results of it. We're seeing the results of, basically now China being the largest economic partner,
Indeed.
basically with the Arab world, more
Exactly.
or less, right?
Exactly.
So we're seeing that happen.
Yeah.
But this is not the beginning of that. This is further down the line, and nobody was talking about this
I did.
except for
I did.
you.
I did.
David is the only one who was talking about this, or one of the only people who's talking about this back then.
Well, yeah, it's because you're seeing where things are headed. And again,
Oh, geez.
yeah. What helped me was because I was on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a conversation with key individuals that have sort of the information that
Yeah.
will, for me as an analyst, to put it together. And that's why I reached my conclusion. And usually I don't say things lightly.
You do not.
Yeah,
That's
I
true.
have to make sure what I'm talking about, because this is my credibility in line. I worked
Mhm.
hard to be what I am.
Yeah.
This is what frustrates me about, when people, you know what I mean.
Some of the other people who
Yeah,
are claiming that they are
You claim to be an
experts.
analyst.
Yeah,
Like, no,
yeah.
it's kind of no. So, but this is where I see the Saudis moving forward with this, because of
Mhm.
that global shift that is now, it's a fait accompli.
Yeah.
Whether the West likes it or not is irrelevant.
Right.
We're moving into that direction. But the Saudis figure out, along with Iranians, way better, work out our differences, because
Yeah.
this shift, it's going to be on a different trajectory altogether, and it's going to be economically based.
Yeah.
We, Iran and Saudi Arabia, happen to have massive amount of oil.
Yeah.
Without access to oil, economies won't move forward.
Right.
So, and that's how they calculated the deal. This is why now you are noticing, for example, the trip of the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, to China, which
yeah.
was there for 3 days. Should we talk about that?
Yeah, let's if you can give like a short kind of breakdown as to
Sure,
what
sure.
happened, so that because that is important, and it's also not important, right? It's important in the sense that now, because the US for a very long time was like, China bad, China bad, China bad, China bad. Okay, well, the problem with that is that if you build an enemy,
Yeah,
and the enemy gets more powerful, then you don't have the same power
Yeah,
that you had over them. And so that seems to be what's happening right now.
indeed. And the trip of the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken went for 3 days. What's the key aspect of it? The key aspect is that the meeting he had with three individuals, and we go in order of ascendancy.
Mm-hmm.
You meet with the foreign minister, you meet with the top diplomat,
Mm-hmm.
and you meet with the president. So it was with Mr. King Gang.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was with Mr. Wang Yi. Then President Xi. That here is the key to all this.
Okay.
So in terms of ascendancy, that's a good, right? But in terms of the timing, it was in
Yeah.
a descending way. What do I mean by this? The first meeting was between Anthony Blinken and Mr. Gang, took about 7.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
The second meeting with Mr. Wang Yi took about 3 hours.
Yep.
And the meeting with President Xi took about, what do you think?
10 minutes.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is bad.
Yeah, right.
Which
right,
is
right.
bad. This is why my conviction is that the decision for presidency to meet with, not to meet, the decision for presidency to grant an audience to the Secretary of State was made to the last minute.
Yeah. I very much.
Yeah, I am
totally agree with that.
absolutely.
Yep.
I could
Yeah.
be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'll admit it, of course.
Mhm.
But that was my thinking way back a few months ago, because I was aware that the trip's going to be happening,
Right.
and I said I doubt it that President Xi will grant.
Yeah.
But how this should be interpreted? It should be interpreted that President Xi gave a nod.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to talk to the Americans.
Yeah.
Which shows what? It shows diplomatic maturity.
Right. And I think it's actually very important, and I'm actually very grateful that they are showing diplomatic.
Yeah, well, they are,
maturity.
but to a degree, at some point, China will have to push back, because here's the thing.
Mhm.
With all this hoopla about the trips from Washington, as a matter of
Yeah.
fact, believe it or not, Congress is going to now ask Blinken, Secretary Blinken, when he comes back, to go for a hearing because they didn't approve the trip. I know.
Yeah.
That shows you right there the conflicting messages from within.
Yeah.
Most Republicans are angry about Anthony Blinken's trip to China. The Hawks wants to keep the China policy. You know what
No,
they
I
mean.
know.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, I think, unwise. And I think there's actually, I pride ourselves on being neither side, right? We pride ourselves on actually being human. At least I do. I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
I pride myself on being able to be a free thinking human being
Uh-huh.
who is able to choose whatever it is that I think or believe is the right thing, not based on party lines, but rather based on sound policy or based on what is the best overall. Because, people tend to go to extremes, right? They're like, oh, well, this is absolutely terrible. Well, think for 1 second, if we hadn't actually tried to make inroads with China, where would we be?
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't have to go if you don't embark on policies that will create tensions to begin with.
Absolutely, I agree with
So
that.
that's to
I
me
agree with
common
that.
sense, because now the trip ends up being nothing but a window dressing,
Right,
because the core fundamental issues remain.
right.
We're still providing weapons to Taiwan. We're still
Right.
even though he came on the air and said we do not call for Taiwan independence. That's just a window dressing.
It is.
When you are training, sending your soldiers to train in Taiwan,
Right.
come on, to me that's the diplomatic approach in itself is flawed.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I agree.
That
I
is
agree
the way I
completely.
see it. So it's same arguments with when, for example, China made the decision not to allow its defense minister, General Li Changfu, to meet with the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin.
Right.
Well, of course, you are sanctioning the person and you want to sit down. That doesn't bode well.
Right.
That doesn't bode well at all.
Right.
Because it shows that we're still in command and dictating the terms. This is why I was surprised, and I'll say it, when President Xi granted the audience for
Mhm.
Antony Blinken for only 30 minutes
Yeah.
because that's not enough time for a setting like that.
No, it's not.
No.
It's not enough time to get anything done. What it is enough time for
Yeah.
is to say, okay, I am willing to talk to you. I am willing to come to the table. And I think you're absolutely right. It is window dressing because our policies are so fragmented.
Yeah.
But look at what you just said. We're looking at, he went,
Mm-hmm.
but then he has a congressional hearing
Yeah, because they didn't want it.
'Cause they didn't
Because they
want
want to
him to
maintain the
go,
status
right.
quo for.
I don't think
Here-
we can afford to maintain the
No,
status quo, if
not
I'm
at
being
all.
honest.
Not at all. Here is the key thing. Check this out,
Okay.
guys. Look, take a look at this. Look at the hands.
Yep. Well, and the
What can
body
you
postures.
what can you
Yeah.
make out of this?
Well, so here I want to look at two things, right? So C is standing upright.
Uh-huh.
He's very, very solid in his position.
Uh-huh.
He's happy. He's smiling. He is clearly in power here.
But no eye contact.
No eye
Did
contact.
you notice that?
Not only that, look how hunched over he is. Look at how hunched over. Not C.
Yeah,
look
right
at how
there.
hunched over. Yep.
Yeah. This is no different than this one here. Look at this one here.
Yep. Look how hunched over he is.
What does it mean?
It's very clear who's in the power position here. If you look at body language, you look at the diplomat from China, the Chinese diplomat, and look how straight up he is. He's not looking. You're absolutely right. And I know eye contact is very different actually in Asian countries than it is in the United States.
Yeah.
However, what you have is a sort of curled over man. He's curled over. He's basically like begging or bowing. And I don't think he's actually bowing here. What I think is happening is he actually feels like he wants the approval of basically what he's here to do is to at least somewhat smooth over relations with China and what's going on. So you can see one person, the Chinese diplomat, is very clearly in power, standing up straight. His eyes are looking a different direction. His head is up. And you look at Blinken and he's curled over. He's looking down. His eyes are they look closed, but they're not closed.
Yeah.
He's probably looking down.
Yeah. It's the same with this that the other picture is the same thing.
He's kind of curled over, not to the same extent, but he's certainly not standing up straight. C is holding his hand out. President C is holding his hand out.
Yeah.
Whereas Blinken is turned his body.
Yeah, you're right.
So out of the two men, one is very clearly in control and the other is not subservient, that's the wrong word, but submissive. Yeah.
That's true. That is true. But the whole idea of it, and to me, this is where diplomacy comes in. And that's why we are lacking diplomats who have a better understanding and grasp of really what the issues are.
Right.
It's not enough just to, be a title of Secretary of State and all that stuff. And you couldn't. So there are already some analysts saying that, America won this diplomatic round. I don't think so.
Have they seen the pictures?
Yeah. Well,
have they seen what happened?
To them, it wasn't about that.
Yeah.
To them, it was about, the United States made its case to China about the core issues. Well, wait a minute. That's why I kind of didn't buy the arguments from those analysts that's saying, the U.S. made the headways in. They didn't.
No,
we didn't.
No.
Because the fundamental issues remain. We are not backing down from sending weapons to Taiwan.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
We are not backing down from the expansion of NATO in Japan.
Right.
South Korea.
Right. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I actually kind of can't imagine that people are saying, this was like a diplomatic win.
Yeah.
It was a diplomatic move.
Yeah.
And I think that it was a diplomatic move on the US's position and a diplomatic move on China's position. Especially to have President Xi come out and actually meet with Blinken, even if it was just for 30 minutes, that is sending a message.
And that's what I said. He made it's like a nod. Now the question, what the fundamental question will be, is whether there will be a pushback inside the Chinese government against President Xi.
That's interesting. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know. It's hard to tell at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I was really convinced that presidency is not going to grant an audience for,
Yeah.
and here it is to the last minute.
Yeah.
That's what surprised me. And again, why? And will
Yeah.
presidency get a pushback from within?
Well,
I don't know.
it's interesting because I don't think that China at any point has actually been interested in warfare with the United States. I think that they will, and this is my personal opinion, I
Okay.
think that they'll go to that if that's what's necessary.
Sorry. Yeah.
But, they over and over, they've said, and I think this is true, if China stopped doing business with the United States, it would crater too. This isn't a one country loses and one
Lose.
country wins situation.
Yeah.
I think China also knows that economically they're in an interesting position. They're also in a challenging position because if they lose the largest market, which
Yeah.
is the United States, they're also screwed. And so they also have to play a fine line.
Yeah, but China has alternatives.
They do have
We don't.
alternatives, but and I think
We
you're
don't.
absolutely right.
So that's why I don't
Right.
see them losing much, because they can just divert stuff to different markets.
Well, they can, but they can't replace the largest economy in the world.
Yeah,
Right?
but the largest economy is not going to be there forever. We're already seeing signs
Right.
that is going down.
Right. It is. But where is that wealth transferring to? Right. So a lot of that wealth is transferring to China. Quite
Yeah.
frankly, a lot
Yeah.
of it's transferring to China. Some is transferring to India, and some is
Not a
transferring to other
lot. When you
places.
look at Apple, for example, just
Right,
moved its
right.
operations
to
from
China, right?
from India to China. Yes.
But the largest market is still the United States.
Yeah.
And so China still wants access to that market. So it doesn't serve China to go to war with the United States either. It doesn't serve either
I
party.
don't know about that, Elizabeth. I
Okay.
kind of, I'm not convinced 100%.
Well,
You know why? You know
okay,
why? I give you
why?
just quick example.
yeah,
Chip manufacturers.
right.
What did
Right.
we do? We blocked, right?
hmm
Allowing certain technology of chips to go to China. What
Yeah.
did China end up doing?
Making their
Making
own.
their own.
Yep.
What happens now in the United States with the chip manufacturer?
Right.
They
Well,
are screaming bloody loud about
yeah.
what are you doing to our businesses? They
Right.
are talking to the government, to the US
Right.
government, Biden administration, that is. To me, that's what explains why, for example, Apple end up pulling out of India and going. Of course, in the case of Apple, it's different reasons because of the
Right.
infrastructure in India, the quality of the product.
Right.
That's what they decide to do. But the big picture is sending the same message.
Right.
Why will Tim Cook will go to China? Why will Elon Musk
yeah,
goes to China?
absolutely.
Why will Bill Gates, the evil Gate that I call him? I know.
Oh,
Going-
and that freaked me out because I think she called him old friend, or to call
They
Bill
knew
Gates
each
old
other
friend.
for a while, but I
Oh.
think it was during one meeting, if I recall. I could
Yeah.
be wrong, but if I recall, it was a meeting at the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Presidency was there, and Bill Gates, of course. We
Well,
all know evil Bill, what he's doing there.
And I think one thing we don't talk about a whole lot is the World Economic
Ah.
Forum and BlackRock and a lot of these large corporate interests, right? Like we can't separate what's happening in the world right now from these entities.
Yeah.
And this is a question that I have because I don't have the answer to this. But my question is because I think Putin was a young World Economic Forum young leader, right? I think he was. And if I'm wrong, you guys correct me in the comments,
Yeah.
but I'm almost certain that he was. And then C also has some kind of ties to the World Economic Forum. Now, what is interesting to me is, is what's happening right now an attempt to get away from the control of the World Economic Forum? Or is this also part of sort of the larger plan that the World Economic Forum has?
Yeah.
And I know we don't talk about the World Economic Forum a lot, but they're a huge global player. Straight up, they're a huge global player. Almost all, if not all, of the largest corporate powers are part of the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
And you may say, that's conspiracy or whatever. It's not. That's reality. The reality is that corporate interests come together and they decide things for the rest of us.
How it's gonna be. Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
And so what I don't know is everything that's sort of happening right now sort of part of that, or is it a pushback against that? And you guys might have better insight on that or a different insight, but I think it's worth considering.
Yeah. Maybe we should do a live stream on that one day.
I think it's
Mm.
important.
What
And
do
if
you guys think?
yeah, you guys let us know. What do you think?
Yeah. So, and this is why I think, just to go back to our original topic about Saudis investing in China, this is why I'm seeing this idea of the investments in China instead of the US. To them, it makes more strategic sense.
Yeah.
And let alone the industries they are investing those billions of dollars. You look at, for example, this the one you mentioned about the $5 billion in the electric car for
Right.
the Chinese electric car maker, Human Horizon for automotive research.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what comes with that also is the idea of access to rare earth minerals.
Yes.
And if I know anything about a rare earth mineral, you'll think about the two key elements for lithium and nickel.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the countries, a lot of the BRICS countries are actually very rich in minerals.
Minerals, yes.
And especially lithium, nickel, and one of the biggest things that China went and did is basically purchase the uranium mines
Yeah.
in Africa,
Yeah.
right? So they have a lot of access to these rare
Yeah.
earth minerals, and we need them if we're going to do electric cars. To do those batteries, we need those. And by the way, mining those is not exactly healthy for the earth either. So I just really want to point that out, because people look at green or electric cars and they say, "Oh, they don't pollute. No problem. No problem."
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, but
where do you get the minerals for the batteries?
I mean, I see your point, but still, we shouldn't dismiss the idea that oil is gonna be over.
I
What I
agree.
said
Yeah.
earlier
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Saudis worrying about oil, it's the oil production, not the oil consumption.
Yeah.
The oil consumption will always be there,
Yeah.
no matter how we look at it.
Yeah.
The electric vehicles and all that stuff, and oil consumptions will always. I saw somebody.
Oh, we have two of them.
Yes, I always like to extend my thanks to those
Yeah.
individuals.
Okay, so we have Hamad Sethi. Thank you for your super sticker.
Thank you.
And then we have Hong Luong.
Oh,
Elizabeth,
Hong Luong.
Micron complained when China blacklisted them. Yeah, that's right. U.S. semiconductor companies couldn't export the chips to China, which equaled a lot of dead stocks. Absolutely. Thank you. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we end up shooting ourselves in the foot by embarking on policies. And this is
Absolutely.
why, to me, diplomacy should be a reflection of how you conduct yourself with other countries.
Yeah.
Not only on a political aspect, but others as well.
Yeah.
And we don't seem to really differentiate between this and that.
Well, you talk about this all the time, David. It seems like our foreign policy is so
Are you telling me that I
fragmented.
repeat myself too much?
No. I actually think it's important
I'm
the
teasing
things
you.
that you repeat
Yeah.
are really critical information.
Indeed.
And one of those is that our foreign policy is so fragmented that we have situations like that where one foot kind of shoots the other, and without any real cohesive plan for how to move the United States forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we're calling for in this show, is instead of doing a sort of reactive sort of foreign policy situation, or one that promotes basically war.
Yeah.
Figure out how to have an actual cohesive plan for the country to move forward.
Yeah.
But there seems to be no political will for that.
Well, you look at no further than what Congress is planning by the time Secretary Blinken came back. He should be back today, I believe.
Yeah.
Today. They already thinking about a hearing for that.
Yeah.
That tells you right there how fragmented our policies here.
Well, here's what I wonder, actually. I wonder if that's real anger.
Yeah.
Or manipulative anger. Because here's what we're looking at, right? We're looking at here, what we have is basically the official narrative is China is bad. China is bad, free Taiwan. Okay. We've heard that before.
Yeah.
A lot of times, depending on which country we're looking at, right? We've heard that argument a lot. So we're looking at China bad, free Taiwan. Okay. Now we're actually looking at diplomats going and trying to smooth things over with China. How does that fit with China bad? Right?
Yeah.
So we have on one hand, we're doing one thing, and
Yeah.
on the other, it's going against the narrative directly. So there's something called it's a human phenomena where and um this has actually been outlined in a lot of books and a lot
Uh-huh.
of ways that countries do things. So we want to go and do whatever it is that we want, right? We
Mhm.
want a war and money
Mhm.
and corporate interests and all
Mhm.
that, but we want to appear like we're not. So it's the
Oh, I see your
perception
point.
versus
Yeah.
reality of
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And so is it actual anger at him for going and doing this, or is it something that all the politicians actually know
No.
really
Yeah.
was what was
Yeah.
needed, but they're acting angry because they've riled up the entire country
Yeah.
against China,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And you have the third option there.
Mhm.
How come Congress didn't do that for the CIA director's visit to China?
That's a great
Yeah.
question.
Why?
Why weren't they
Oh, they
angry at
won't.
him?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the CIA role will be the 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 key player behind the scenes.
Mhm.
To me, it's very concerning. Why? Because are you turning now your foreign policy to an intelligence agency,
Yeah.
which is bad to begin with? The
Well,
CIA has nothing to do with foreign policy.
yeah.
They're clueless about that. They are
Yeah.
not made for that to begin with.
Well, although do they know more than
Well,
the rest
yeah,
of the government at this
like
point?
when they found out after the Berlin Wall came down, they find out later, or when Egypt,
Yeah.
the demonstrations after the fact, the CIA became aware.
Yeah.
Oh, there's an uprising in the
Oh,
Cairo
wow.
after the fact.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, so that's just it brings the question forth as to really understanding how these dynamics work
Right.
will give you an idea of whether are we on a path towards finding a solution to those tensions,
This seems like
or
no, right?
no? This is why to me a trip like this, because I always ask about what did the trip achieve,
Right.
what are the goals, what has been,
Right.
you read the statements from State Department. Oh, Secretary Blinken is going to China to talk about how we can cooperate and how
Mhm.
we can move this competition in a healthy direction.
Yeah.
What if you are to talk about this? How come you still embarking on the same policies that create the
Right.
problem in the first
Right.
place? Yeah, it
Right.
just doesn't make sense.
Why wasn't it, hey, we're gonna back off on Taiwan?
Yeah.
Right? Hey, we're not gonna hold joint
Well,
military
we shouldn't
drills
even
anymore.
be there to begin with
Yeah.
because we signed 3 communiques.
Yeah.
We recognize one China policy. End of story.
Right.
So when we are doing what we're doing, it's almost we're saying, oh, yeah, we have that on the paper that
Yeah.
we recognize one China policy, but we don't recognize that policy. What
Right.
does it say about you?
Right.
You can, that's like what just happened now. Did you know that there is a peace agreement that Ukraine signed?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal. And guys, if you want us, we're probably gonna do a show on this because this is really
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
So you want to say a little bit more about that?
Well, I was going to just say briefly here, the idea of, yeah, here is a document, but because, once you sign, you have obligation to honor that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So for us to be behaving in a way that we're saying, oh, no, we don't want Taiwan to declare independence, yet we're fomenting tensions, that just doesn't make sense.
Right.
Because that means you are not recognizing the policy we signed on.
Right.
3 communiques, as I said again.
Yeah.
So, and this brings back to the case of Ukraine, that Ukraine signed that document.
Yeah. So
Sure.
basically, the short version of what
Yeah.
happened is that in 2022,
Two.
and
Yes.
please correct me if I
No, it was
wrong,
right.
but in
2022.
2022,
Yes.
Ukraine and Russia sat down. Putin and Zelensky actually sat down and created a peace agreement.
Yeah.
And it was about the time, if my understanding is correct, that was about the time that Nancy Pelosi was involved, and there was some diplomatic visits from the United States, and all of a sudden that peace agreement
Evaporates.
It evaporated,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's coming back to light right now. But what would it have meant to the Ukrainian people if that had been held up? Would they have been able to go back home? Would they be
Yeah.
able to sleep at night?
Yeah.
Would the deaths have been prevented? And a lot of people, this is crazy to me, but a lot of people say that there's an acceptable amount of losses that you can
Yeah.
have in war.
No, it's
But the
never.
reality is those are human
Yeah.
beings. Those are people.
Yeah. Are we going to be saying the same about acceptable losses in Vietnam? Are we going to
Right.
be saying the same about what Japan did to Chinese? Are we
Right.
going to be saying the same about Cambodia,
Right.
Laos, and all? It's kind of, call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
We can, no, no, we cherry pick the
Right.
terminology we use to justify policy. And this is why I've been saying this forever, that our foreign policy has been a militarized
Right.
foreign policy. And
Right.
that gives no way of you to be in a good term with other countries.
Right.
Yes, they still can sit down with you for a photo op, but that's it.
Right.
That's to me what this trip means for. Yeah, maybe we should do a show about that
Yeah.
document. So
Well, I think it's actually very important because it would have changed the course of a lot of things
for
had
sure.
that document actually been upheld.
Yeah.
And I think the world is at a very different time now where overall, we've been lied to and lied to and lied to and lied to about the purpose of war. Because if the purpose of war is some like heroic, noble thing where you're going to fight for the freedom of downtrodden people, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't end up. We have so many historical, and you can probably also speak to this too. We have so many historical pieces of evidence where that's not what actually happens.
Yeah.
What happens is that there's needless loss of life. What happens is, there are non-fighting women and children who end up being casualties of this situation. There's mass destruction, and a few benefit,
Yeah.
and a lot hurt because of it. And I think
Yeah.
that that's just not okay
and
anymore.
we are seeing this with the example of Ukraine.
Yeah.
And this is why my big concern has always, and it will always be,
Yeah.
till I know for a fact those tensions regarding Taiwan will not, because
Yeah.
Taiwan, I hope that doesn't happen, but it will even be worse in case of,
Yeah.
we've seen what's going on in Ukraine. And, I am sort of leaning towards, I don't foresee the military things in Taiwan, because this is, again, as a matter of fact, did you know that, for example, in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
a survey was conducted recently?
Yeah.
It was conducted by Asahi. I forget the other name of and this entity. It's deals with journalism and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Its first publication was in 1897.
Oh my god.
And they're still in business, which tells you
Wow.
what?
Yeah.
Credibility.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
They conducted a survey,
Mhm.
found that 80% of Japanese do not want their country to get involved
Yeah.
in the Taiwan-China tension.
Yeah.
This saying, I did a video on it on the other channel, small channel there. I
Mhm.
said, stay out of it.
Yeah.
This what explains why Shinzo Abe was taken out.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and
Yeah,
honestly,
we don't hear much about it
yeah,
here.
we don't. And
So, and as a matter of fact, the person who was saying this,
Mm.
she's from Okinawa. She gave a speech in the UN back in 2018, first time she was invited, and to call for the right of the indigenous people. Because the history of Okinawa.
yeah.
Okinawa has never belonged to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put the dots on the letter, as we say.
Yeah.
Despite what you hear, there's a historical. And I asked Dr. Hammond, you remember him?
Yeah.
Dr. Ken Hammond.
Yeah.
He's a well-known historian when it comes down to Asia, especially China and all, and he understands that part of the world as well.
Yeah.
And I asked him that question. He said, yeah, there is a historical fact and record
Yeah.
suggesting that Okinawa was never bad Japan. And as a matter of fact, Okinawa is only 1 hour flight from Taiwan.
Mhm.
Can you imagine the tensions in Taiwan? What's
Yeah.
going to do to it?
Yeah.
So that is why. So the idea of you will think that Taiwanese, and I am sure inside, they can see what's going on in Ukraine.
Oh my gosh. I hope. I actually
yeah.
hope.
Yeah, they
But
are.
will they be able to actually do anything about it? And I think that that's why it's important for us.
Yeah.
Because if it's unpopular in the United States, it probably won't happen.
And it will be. That's one of the argument I made.
Mm-hmm.
I made the argument that the assumption that Japanese will come because they are right wingers inside
Mhm.
Japan.
Yeah.
You know what the survey found?
What?
11% of them are in favor of Japan getting involved if Taiwan, if China end up taking over Taiwan, or a military conflict.
Yeah.
And they are saying, justifying it, that the US Japan rather, should get involved in support of the United States. And the reason being is because they're going to have to think in terms of, what's the word I'm looking for? They're gonna lose democracy. Oh, come on, give me a break. What democracy are we talking about? Do they know the outcome that's gonna be leading to that?
Yeah.
But I bet you my work, because what the US saying in that case is US military hardware will be at the disposal of Japan, assuming Japan is attacked.
I think the Japanese would prefer to not be attacked.
Because this will make 1945 look like a peanut.
Yeah. Yeah, with the weapons we have right now.
I hope they can understand this reality. It will make 1945 looks like peanut. That's the way I look at it.
Well, and I hope we here in the United States can also understand this reality, because like I said, if it's not popular here, it won't happen. Now, unfortunately, I think something else might happen, but there's only so long you can use the excuse of democracy because that
rule of law.
Right, rule of law, because that doesn't carry not only here, but we've watched democracy be violated over and over and over again. And even here in the United States, we're not that focused on democracy, quite frankly. I wish we were. But
well, where is your democracy when they are violating your rights, as far as your, for example, censorship, as a small example, your right to privacy, as an example, you sort of issues with health decisions, why the government should decide for your health.
Right.
You know, it's kind of, those are basics, right? You know, what gives us a right to go and dictate that to other countries? And I bet you this, that one thing's going to stop is the popular uprising against an intervention in Asia, let alone against China. And I'm not saying this as we are so scared or afraid of China. That is not what I'm saying. And I can repeat this to make it clear. It's about the lack of understanding on both sides on both countries, Japan and the United States. The population has no grasp of how intricate and complicated and serious a conflict is going to be.
Yeah. Well, like you said earlier, maybe they can take a look at Ukraine and see what's happening there, and maybe, figure that out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
But there's a reality that wars have not been fought on U.S. soil, so we don't. Let me correct myself. There have been wars fought on U.S. soil, but they were a long time ago, and no one who's still alive right now, remembers those wars on the U.S. soil. If people understood what war was like, I have a very strong feeling that they wouldn't want to go to it anymore, or they wouldn't want to put that on anyone else. I have a fundamental belief that humanity is good. And I know that a lot of people will disagree with me to the death on that, but I feel that humanity is overall good. And I actually have a lot of faith that humanity will figure this out. But it takes everyday people, it takes us, it takes you guys to be able to figure that out, to be able to say, we actually don't want more conflict. We actually want something else. We want to go to countries and we want to build them up instead of tear them down.
All right. Let me say thank you here to Tom Putra. Thank you very much. China have completed their test on molten salt thorium reactor, and they now can generate hydrogen from seawater. China will be a major energy producer in the future. This is why Saudi is shifting to China. Good point.
That's very interesting.
Good point. Thank you so much for your super sticker.
Hold on, wait. We have two more. We have Juniper Lee. Thank you very much for your super sticker. And then Tommy Putra has a follow-up. Both of the molten salt thorium nuclear generators and any water source hydrogen generator is the future of fuels. Yeah, that's actually very interesting.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
that is a good point. So, well, should we? Is there any question?
Yeah,
one or two. That's about it. Because I have to go do another research for our next video.
Yes.
Because that's the only time I have.
Guys, if you have a question, type in the word question and we will answer it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this is the kind of conversation that's actually critically important for us to be having.
Yeah,
And a
sure.
lot of people don't want to have it. A lot of people want to believe, oh, this place is bad or this
This
place is
place is
bad.
yeah,
But the reality is that there's good and bad people
everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah,
And you have to look at whose interests are at play, who is primarily interested in whatever conflict it is,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because for example, in Ukraine and Russia, the Ukrainian people are not the ones who are dictating what's happening here, right?
They're paying the price.
They're paying the price, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the politicians that are,
Yeah. Or maybe that's why we need to do a topic next time about really who's controlling the process from behind
Yeah.
the scenes. As a matter of fact, it was one of our viewers put a comment on that. Can you guys talk
Oh,
about this one? If
I think that that's very important because it isn't.
Yeah.
So we have a government course, guys. If you want to check it out, sign up for our free newsletter, and I'll be sending out. And here is the link. We have free newsletter at geopoliticsandconflict.com. So if you sign up for the newsletter, I'll send out information about the government course that's going to be taught live. But the biggest thing that I actually found, and I think you also found this in your travels around the world, is
Yeah.
how wrong people are about how the United States government works specifically.
Yeah, they don't know.
And a lot of people I found were talking about, you know, how Biden is going to save them, right? If something happens, Biden is going to save them. And I was like, you know, you guys don't get the same footage that we do of Biden stumbling over his words, President Biden stumbling over his words, falling down all the time. You know, they don't get that footage. They don't get to see the
they won't show
same
them that.
version of the politicians we see. And so, yeah, if you guys want to know how the government actually works, sign up in the link below and yeah, check it out.
Oh, great. So,
all right, let's see if we have any questions. There's usually a lag, so guys, we do questions every
actually,
day.
as we said last time, if there were 100 members on the
Yeah.
channel, we'll be happy to do exclusive Q&A for them.
Yeah,
So, what do you guys think?
Hit the join button below. I don't know where it is,
Yeah.
but hit the join button below if you want to join our membership. And when we reach 100 members, we are going to do a live just for you guys. And we'll keep doing lives just for you guys the more that we have.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you find it very informative. And by the way, make sure to subscribe if you have not done so already. We truly appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you next time. As always, remember or prepare. As always, prepare yourself for changing world order. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.